start with the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll have a moment of silence to remember Ron Updike, who was a member of this community and served as the highway superintendent. The obituary said 10 years. I didn't think it was quite that long, but. Thank you. Our first order of business is acceptance of the paint bid. Or not, we can put it off till next week, I guess. Oh dear. I guess I didn't bring all the files I should have.
I have some of the copies of paint bid if that helps.
No, I don't have any of those copies. There was interest in references. So I have references on two. I agreed to do references on two of the bids. And so I agreed to get references on the Wright Brothers painting, 6211 Burr Road, Trumansburg, New York. The Wright brothers have been painting in the Trumansburg area for my whole adult life, since they're younger than I am, you know. They started young. In the past 2 years, I got a reference from David Allen, landscaper in Mecklenburg and caretaker of Grove Cemetery in Trumansburg. David's out of town, and I was out of town for part of the day, so I couldn't get anything written. But 2 years ago, they painted the Mecklenburg Methodist Church. It's two colors. Everybody's incredibly pleased with it in the congregation and in the community. Wright Brothers has also painted they have a special name for it, the entrance building at Grove Cemetery in Trumansburg. And they've painted David Allen's personal house. All of these are 2 or 3 color jobs. Quality of work is outstanding. I also did First General, and I contacted Jerry Willard from First Ward Action Council, and they're in the Binghamton area. And Jerry said they were very pleased, and I did get an email on that one sentence, but it's in my April folder and not in the folder I have tonight. And Virginia, who is excused because of family illness that called her out of town, did Marchuska Brothers?
Sounds right.
Does it sound right? She called 3 people as First General. Machuska does lots of things besides painting. They do sheetrocking, taping, so does First General. But she did call one where they only painted. Well, all of them painted that she called, but they did other stuff too. They were very satisfied with Machuska.
So the lowest price of all of them was the Wright brothers, so, as I remember.
I believe, yes, not by a
lot, but by some.
yeah, I do not remember the next highest. Was it First General or Machuska?
I think it was Matryoshka. I think they were not a lot, $300.
65.
or
Oh, I
something
don't
like
think it was that much.
Yeah, it was fairly low.
Yeah,
But then they went up to a 14,000, and then they went up to the 23 and 24,000.
right,
There,
right. So does anybody want to make a motion to accept one of these bids, or do you want to put it off till next
I
week?
would make a motion to accept the Wright brothers bid.
Seconded.
Any other discussion?
They're local, they have the best price. Sounds like they do good work.
They're reputed.
Part of the community, and that
in
sounds
the
great.
Shermansburg area to,
Yeah,
and that's all they do is painting.
right.
They don't do much repair. You have to get somebody else to repair. They paint.
Well, it sounded like from reading the others that they were probably going to be very hands-on to the work itself. The other ones tend to be bigger companies that are going to send somebody to do it. It sounded like they're
Well, yeah.
likely to be more a part of the day-to-day process of the painting and can oversee it better, especially being local.
Any other discussion? Call the vote.
Councilperson Carpenter?
Aye.
Councilperson Handstein?
Aye.
Councilperson Miles?
Aye.
Supervisor Ryder?
Aye. Well, I'll call Earl tomorrow morning and get more papers signed. I better keep these bids now to give them on to Alice.
Yeah.
Are these all the bids you had?
That's all the ones that I had, yeah.
Okay.
I didn't have them in Patricia.
Okay. Weren't there 5? Well, I'll round them up. I'll round them up.
Yeah, I think maybe Virginia would have that one.
She has Machuska. Okay, so we're on to, I guess before I forget, oh God, I forgot that folder. I left a folder home. Okay, I'm giving you a copy of a draft road use agreement that Guy Crow has formulated in relationship to the Black Oak Farm. I was going to give that to you tonight, so I've got the copies. I'll give them to you tomorrow to look over to discuss next Wednesday. Okay. Now a more general discussion of Black Oak Wind Farm.
We had one thing that came up at the meeting last night. I'll try and describe it, Michael, you can tell me if I'm missing it, but basically what it amounted to was, as in the committee, our understanding was we were gonna try and get all of the reports submitted to the board before the next board meeting next Wednesday, so that board members would have time to go over them and we could discuss them at the next board meeting, basically. The question was, in terms of information and formatting and how we actually make these reports in order for the town to be able to use them in the best way possible. We wanted to think about actually what the town was going to do with them, what we're anticipating to do them, whether we will decide that we want to give them to Alice to put in the comment section for the SDEIS, whether we want to just keep them and make some kind of a decision based on them and then make a separate comment to the DAS. Basically, it has to do with how they'll be expressed and formatted and proposed in the end. That's gonna be most beneficial for the town board to be able to use them in relation to what we wanna do with them for the supplemental draft environmental impact statement. That make sense? It's a little fuzzy, I think.
I'm
but-
thinking and hammering through it, I guess. Well, the question or the process before us is completing the draft environmental impact statement. That's the process we're in.
Okay.
And that is the decision before us, accepting that as complete.
And making comments on it if we choose to. Because in order to
Yes.
be complete, we want to make sure it is complete, and to make sure it is complete, we may want to ask them to do something.
To make it more complete.
Well, I don't know if complete is the word, to make it more to our liking, let's say, to have the things in it that we want to have in it, and have it done in the way that the board would like to see it done, basically. So not so much the completeness of it. I mean, the first vote on it was, is it complete and ready to be looked at? Now we're looking at, and the
That's
next
right.
question is, are we happy with what we see? And I assume at some point the board wants to say, we're happy with what we see completely, or we would like this to change, or we would like this to be added, or this to be subtracted, or whatever.
That is a
we might decide.
possibility that the board can do.
Exactly.
Are you happy?
With the DSGIS, SGIS as it is? No, there's things that I would want to, well, add, subtract, include.
When do we discuss that?
Well, that's kind of was my question. That was what I was gonna ask. And whether, assumably, the committee reports will be part of our discussion. It was a matter of trying to get a little bit, I know timing is a little bit tight because the 22nd, I think, is when the comment period closes.
Yes.
Which means we will have one more meeting right now before the comment period closes. So we could either,
We,
we-
the board,
we as a board,
yes.
could either decide to make comments on it, but as a board together, we would have to do that at the next meeting, or unless we had another meeting after that, we would have to make those comments at the next meeting. So in terms of being able to make those comments at the next meeting, it could be a fairly long, hash it out, hammer it out process. It could be we will decide to just submit the committee reports as a whole. We may look at them and read them and say, these sound relevant. These are the comments we'd like to submit to have addressed over the course of the process. Anything that we submit to be addressed will be addressed. And if we are happy with how it's addressed, then when it comes back, we can say, great, we're ready to vote, yes, it sounds good. Or if we're not happy with how that's addressed, we can say, that wasn't sufficiently addressed, in my opinion. We need to go back to Black Oak Wind Farm and say, this wasn't addressed sufficiently for the town board to be comfortable with it, we would like you to address it again. And we can do that ad infinitum if we want to. We can do that many, many times, as long as each time we do it, it's substantive and real in terms of what we're asking to be addressed. It's not just something silly, but there's real questions that we have that we need to have looked at and answered before we want to give it approval, basically, the FEIS. So I was just mostly wondering if we think that next week's meeting we will be able to do that, and I think that has something to do with how we want to do it. So to some degree, when Michael and I and the rest of the committee were talking about it last night, we were trying to decide, well, what would be the best procedure and format and process to get this information to the board as a whole, so that it can be dealt with in a timely manner, and we can not have to say, oh, well, now we're going to have 6 more meetings and talk about it and do that. We're trying to get the process at least somewhat organized and functional, so it works better. And it's complicated. There's a lot of information. Some of the information, some of the reports may have a pro and a con to them. Some of them may be very clear and say, this is what we've decided and what we think. Some of them may have a very clear description of what the people that wrote that particular section thought and felt and decided. And then it may have footnotes on it that say, well, this group decided to do this, but however, one or two other people feel differently, so we have a footnote at the bottom that says, yes, but, and yes, but, and yes, but. So there could be many different formats. The question to the board is, would defining and detailing the format, procedure, and process and description at this meeting be better to do in order to get something at the next meeting for us to deal with and talk about that's going to be more appropriate and easier to deal with, or more, well, just that we can do it better, basically. Does that make sense?
So what I'm hearing you say is that there's some people on the current board that want to make a comment during this comment period.
Well,
My understanding was this was a period of time when the board gathers comments from the public. But perhaps that's too narrow. Maybe
Well,
my understanding
I
is
think
too
both
narrow.
of what you said are true. The question is, does the board as a whole, as a board, want to make some kind of a comment, presentation to the draft to be addressed when it comes back in its final form? Or should we just do it individually as board members and let other people do their own? Kind of like Labella. You know, Labella looked at things and said, okay, here are Labella's comments to this. And I'm sure that they sat and talked together, at least one or two of them, maybe more, and said, okay, we read it together, let's sit down together and think about what we want to say about this thing. And then when the comments came back from Labella, they were comments from Labella. It wasn't any individual at Labella, it was Labella itself. My understanding was that that's a gathering of wisdom and knowledge about the situation, about the information that's there, and people's best thoughts, best ideas about what would be better to put into it as a comment. And I'm sure there would be some back and forth, give and take. Why don't you say this? Well, no, that doesn't quite say it. Let's do it this way. And some said, yeah, that sounds better. And perhaps as a board, we could do that better than we could just as individuals. You know, a lot of times, wisdom multiplied by itself can be greater wisdom.
Thoughts?
You probably have some key issues that you want to see addressed, I would imagine.
I definitely do, and I think probably everybody who has spent very much time thinking about the process, and who has either been assigned to do that or have volunteered to do that, each person definitely has key issues that mean things to them. One of the concerns I have is that if we scattershoot comments, oh, I want to know about this part of the ISRO, and I want to know about that part of the ISO, and what about the fire issue over here? And we spent many hours in our committee meetings basically bringing up all those little bits and pieces of things and saying, okay, well, do we want to talk about this? Do we want to talk about that? And to some degree, it was wasted time, but it wasn't really wasted in the fact that we got a larger scope for our conversation. At some point, that scope had to be begun to be narrowed down, which is what we've been doing the last few weeks, and saying, okay, let's then now focus more in detail about certain areas and have a group of people take a certain area so that we can take all of these different kinds of comments that we've made, different kinds of problems or issues or understandings that we have, put them into a format that's readable and understandable and compact and concise, and the information is fairly clear without all the bits and pieces of it flying away. My thinking is that the more that that's done, the more that, coming at it from Black Oak's side, if I don't get 117 comments about noise issues that then have to be read over and codified into, well, this is that kind of a noise issue and that's this kind of a noise issue, and then try and figure out ways that they can say, well, these questions are all alike, so maybe we can do one answer for all these questions here and do that. You know, it certainly is a time-consuming process, and I'm sure it takes a lot of time for them as well. It seems to me that the more concise and detailed and accurate your comments are in terms of what your issues really are and what we're really trying to figure out and what we're really looking for from Black Oak, the easier it'll be for them to do, the more quickly it can happen, the more likely you are to get the process moving, you know, and everybody's. And I think it's to everybody's advantage to keep it moving as much as we can. You know, I know the Black Oak folks would like to get building, and I know the folks that live out there would like to get an understanding of how they have to adjust or adapt their lives to whatever is going to be happening around them in the future. So I think for both sides there's a lot of anxiety in the waiting. So the more we can be concise and speed the process up, I think the better we'll be. And to me, that means if the board has something to say as individuals and presented as individuals, yes, that'll be beneficial. I think if the board were to say, here are 3 significant issues that we feel really important about, if I was a Black Oak representative, I would say, oh, all 5 board members say this is a really significant issue to them. Let's take some time and really look at this issue and see if we can find a good answer to this and be, you know, as complete and as concise as we can about answering this question. That's how I would feel if I was on the other side of the process. So I'm just basically saying, can we do this better as a board as a whole than we could as individuals? And do we want to?
Might not get all 5 board members to agree. Would we vote and say, well, we took a vote and we decided this is an issue?
Right, and the same was true for the committee members. I mean, we have different people doing
That would
different
be the
groups.
way you would do it.
Which way?
If there was differences among the board members, that would be your suggestion. That
I don't know that I really think of it that way. I think, I might be wrong, but I think that all of the board members right now have very similar concerns in this issue. I think we all have a great desire for Black Oak Wind Farm to be able to be built. I think at the same time, we all have a really significant understanding that there will be, to some degree, negative effects on the people that are going to live close by. And as representatives of that population, I think all of us are concerned about that and would like to find a way to mitigate any issues, or perhaps even, luck of all world, we would find a compromise that would make both sides happy. But at least, you know, if it doesn't happen, well, it doesn't happen, okay, then there's no issues to deal with really, other than the fact that it didn't happen and there's a whole lot of people that are out of money. But if it does happen, and let's assume that we would all like it to happen, there are significant issues for the people that live nearby. I mean, I don't think any of us would say that it won't affect them in some way. I think we all feel like there will be some effect in them,
Yes.
one way or another. So rather than to say we all would agree or disagree about a certain thing, I would like to find a way that we can all say, this is really important, and let's address this issue to Black Oak Wind Farm, because that's who we're addressing it to, in a way that says to them, we feel this is important. We feel like it's something that you need to look at and consider and perhaps find a compromise to, perhaps not, perhaps be willing to negotiate, but whatever. We're not giving them an answer. I don't think we can give them an answer, but we can say what's important to us. And we can emphasize certain things, and Henry could say, well, I think the ice throw is really important, or Michael might say, well, the noise is really important, it's more important than that, and I might say something else entirely. And then we might write up a paper for the response that says, we feel like these 3 areas are really significant, and that these are 3 areas that we want you to look into, consider, and think about the possibility of some mitigation or some compromise in these areas. And I don't think it has to be a point of saying, well, Henry's ice throw is really the most important, so we're just gonna say ice throw, or Michael's noise issues are the most important. I don't think we have to do that. I think we need to tell the people that are waiting for these answers or waiting for these questions from us exactly what's important to us, exactly what's the most significant thing to us. Because otherwise, they don't have anything to go on.
Marguerite, I recognize you.
Just as a process, because my understanding is this is kind of a process question from you, Mike, to say,
It definitely is a process question,
to
yes.
say, how does the board respond to the draft EIS in an organized fashion that gets you the answers you'd like to see?
And
Is
that gives you the ability to know what we're thinking and wanting to know, yeah.
My understanding just of the secret process and of this board as a convener, as the lead agency, is that the board as an entity does not make comments to the draft EIS as a board, because you are the receivers of the comments, so to
That's
speak.
mine.
So any individual can make these comments on the board. It's the job of the final impact statement, which is the town's document, not the project's document, to incorporate the comments made by everybody and say, here are the things we need to see addressed. And then as a next step beyond that, the final finding statement is the point at which you say, these are the ways you, Black Oak, are going to address them. You are going to make your turbines all out of plastic and the birds are going to be made of rubber, and these are the conditions under which this could go forward. And so it is both in the finding and in the final impact statement that are the venues for the board as an organization to put its stamp on the process, if you will.
I understand that, actually, and what I actually would like to do is change that process. I want to change the world. I want to change the way that people do things. And I think it's foolish for people to continue to do things, boards and individuals to continue to do things in ways that are inefficient, that are inappropriate, that don't really get good answers in a timely manner, and probably cost more money. Why not change things when you can, when you have a position of authority or ability to change them, and try and do it a better way? So my better way is what I'm talking about right now, and saying, well, if I was Black Oak, I would like to know what the board thinks as a whole, because otherwise I'm getting individual things and I'm going to do that, and then somebody's going to come back and then it's going to be a vote, and it's going to be democracy. Okay, well, democracy is what? The majority wins.
It's a republic, it's not a democracy.
Okay, well, however this,
It's a representative.
whatever they call majority rule, I have always hated the idea of majority rule my whole life. I
Be a
understand.
Quaker then.
I don't have to be a Quaker, I'm a board member. And what I'm saying,
And under the rules of the
And-
board.
and what I'm
Yes,
saying as
that's
a board
exactly-
member,
well, you're not a Quaker.
but you say rules. I say rules can be completely avoided and dealt with if you decide that what you want to do is find a consensus. If we decide that we want to find a consensus way of dealing with this issue, then we don't have to have a concern about whether the majority rules, whether it's a 3-2 or a 4-1 or whatever it might be. We don't have to do it that way. We're not required to do it that way just because there is something in this town law book that says majority rules.
Well, I affirm that I'd uphold the Constitution, and I believe it's in the New York State Constitution, that that's the way municipal businesses.
That's the way our whole country works. Unfortunately, these days, it's
That-
the problem. But
Well, your opinion is it's unfortunate,
yeah, well, I think if we did, well, we won't get into that. But
but
New York State has laws that govern the secret process, and the DEC is ultimately responsible for creating the guidance on the interpretation of what that means as far as the law, and that's the process that we use. So some of it is not, that's flexible in there, but
I think many
the process
governmental
that Margaret
agencies
laid out is pretty much,
and
that's
parts
it.
of governments will say that the secret process is cumbersome to be nice. I mean, they'll say more too. It's a cumbersome process.
I don't have a problem with the secret process. I have a problem with the majority rule process. That's what my problem is. I think the concept of majority rule, every time that I read about it and thought about it and heard about it, it had something on the back side of it. And that was the phrase minority rights. And we seem to have lost track of that. We seem to have lost track of the idea that just because 6 people say, I want to do it this way, and 5 people say, well, no, I don't want to do it that way, I want to do it the other way, doesn't mean that those 5 people have no rights at all. It just means that the 6 people say are a majority, so we try and deal with it that way. If we decide that we're going to live by majority rule in every instance, we can do that, but I think we're losing a lot as a civilization, as a country, as a town board, if that's what we decide to do.
What's the alternative, though?
The alternative is that you discuss issues, come to some understandings, and find a way, if you can, through that, to a point where you have a point of agreement. You say, okay, we can agree on this, and this is how we know we can go ahead from here. And that can happen in certain circumstances. It possibly can happen in most circumstances. I don't think it'll happen at all, but in any situation, you can try and make that happen. Or you can just say, any questions? No, vote. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, you win. That's okay, you know. It's okay until the results, the people that didn't get their way have to then go back and deal with the fact that they didn't get any of the things that they needed. And I would feel that way either way. Whichever side wins in this, the residents or the town board or the Black Hook people, we're all going to lose. If we just do it as a win and lose, we're all going to lose. Because there's people that are going to lose in this situation, and they're going to be hurt. There's people with money invested in this thing. There's the fact that we need a different source of energy in this country and in this world. If that doesn't happen, that's going to be really hurt and damaging. It's going to send wind generation concepts back for a while, because people are going to say, they just won't let us do it. You know, don't do it anymore. Don't even try anymore. Don't invest money in that. If the other side happens and it just happens and say, okay, we put everything right, there's no problem for these people, they don't have to worry about it, well, then they go back and they live in their houses for the next 5 years, and some of them may be very happy and not have any problems at all. Some of them may have some real significant issues, health issues or whatever it may be. We don't really know yet, and there's no way at this point to prove that it's going to happen. But I would bet you that some people are going to have some health issues because of this. And do we want to just say, gee, that's tough? Or do we want to say, well, let's see if we can think about them too in this process somehow? That's what I would like to do.
Well, I assume that this committee has been operating on that.
I think we have, yeah, I think we have.
And it was the intent of the committee to sum up what, you know, it has been doing the last few weeks, actually few months now, you know, through the reports, to at least present in written form, you know, what we've learned. And it is, not all of us are going to be in agreement on what is said in those. And so the format that I proposed is to have the individual sections in each particular area of concern, but also have an appendix where there is, or is an individual summary that people can have, you know, dissenting comments and opinions, you know, if a committee member does not agree with something that was said in the entire report. So, that is the intention of what, you know, we plan to submit next week.
But as far as this board goes, when I affirmed, I didn't swear, I affirmed that I'd uphold the rules of the Constitution of the United States and New York. This is the process. It's a representative democracy, and it's voting. I'm a lifelong Quaker. I'm not down at 3rd Street. I'm not over at Perry City at business meeting, at monthly meeting. I'm here as an elected official of this town, and I have to use this process.
And I don't want to change that at all. I agree with it completely.
Good.
But within the confines of that process, if I say to you that there are two really important things to me. One is that we figure out some way for this Black Oak wind farm to happen. That's really important to me. Second of all, and just as important, we figure out some way that the people who live close to it that are going to be damaged by this thing happening have some way that they can, not necessarily recompense, because I'm not thinking about money so much as I'm thinking about their lives, some way that they can continue to live their lives in a way that they don't lose significantly from the Black Oak wind farm happening. I would bet that all of us feel that way. So if I'm going to start with the idea of a compromise, that's what I start with. I don't want to argue about the things that we don't agree on. I don't even really think they're all that important. Noise issues are noise issues. They're going to affect some people, they're not going to affect some people. I think everybody who talks about the noise issues has some right in what they say and some wrong in what they say. I don't think anybody's really got it right yet, because the people that we're talking about, and it's going to affect different people different ways. What I'm concerned with is to find some way for this wind farm to happen and do the least damage to the people that live close to it. And I think we could all agree that that's a worthy goal to
I
compromise.
can agree
for.
with that word,
So-
that goal.
So that's what I want to get to.
When do we hear your ideas, how to get to that?
Um,
Because I've been trying to come up with some, and I haven't had much luck.
Well, I have lots of thoughts about it. I'm sure other people do too. And I've talked to a lot of people about it, and I know that the wind farm is not just a farm; it's actually a corporation. And as Peter Bardaglio said, first meeting he came to, we're a corporation. We have to act like a corporation. We have to do things in keeping with what the corporation makes us do, basically. So, to some degree, that's a restriction, but I think it's one that we just need to decide that is there, and we need to live within and try and say, okay, well, that's a restriction. Now, if we're dealing with a corporation, not a group of people, what do we have to do to deal with a corporation? And I don't know all the answers to that. I don't know what's the best way to do that. I know that the start to the way to do it is to open the conversation. To open the conversation with the Black Oak Wind Farm folks and say, these things are important to us. Are you willing to accept the fact that we need you to address these issues in a substantive way that gives us some assurance that significantly less damage or less harm will happen to the residents that might possibly be affected by when the wind farm happens.
So are you thinking about maybe having turbines shut down at night if they go beyond a certain
I
noise
hadn't
level?
thought
or-
that at all. No, that wasn't what as far as my understanding of what a wind farm is, it pretty much has to function as a wind farm. I don't think it has the ability to be your friendly neighborhood wind farm. I think it has to be the wind farm that's owned by, these folks don't have the money to spend millions and millions of dollars to buy the turbines. They have to have financial support from other people to do that. So at that point, they become even less capable of being flexible and open to changes in how they're going to go about doing things. My concern would be more to deal with the residents who live there and find ways to make it so the residents can either find a way to live there or be able to leave and find another home for themselves. And I think in many cases, or in some cases perhaps, that may be what would have to happen. If we can assure them that they can find some way to relocate themselves without losing significantly financially so that they can actually afford to go somewhere else and live, I think that's one thing we could do. It's a heck of a choice to make. It's not something I would want to make, and I don't think any of the people who live out there would make that willingly, would say, I've lived here for 30 years, this is my backyard, these are the animals that I know, these are the neighbors. I don't want to leave here, but that may be the only choice that we can offer them. If it is the only choice we can offer them, let us at least offer them that choice and not have them feel like they have to move from their houses, go live with their neighbors or their relatives somewhere else, and then not have any money to live on because they can't even sell their houses anymore because they're 100 or 1,000 feet away from a wind generator and nobody wants to buy it for.
Well, that was exactly a concern that I had, and I came up with an idea, and I said, well, first, people who live near the wind turbines and think that they won't be able to deal with them, they get their houses appraised, and they pay for it, just so everybody doesn't
Right.
demand the town pay for it. So then, next tax period, they get a credit on a tax bill for the cost of that appraisal. So the town pays for their appraisal, distributed amongst all the taxpayers.
Right.
Then if they decide they can't live there, they put their house on the market for a year with a licensed broker. And after the year, whatever their highest bid is, they take it, and Black Oak pays the difference between the appraisal and what their highest offer was. But that idea didn't seem to be popular with Black Oak or a couple of residents. I mean, it's still a big deal to have to move, and Black Oak said, well, our investors aren't going to like that, so.
There are other towns that have done that and have written very long, descriptive, legal papers that said this is how the entity will have to deal with it if people want to move. I don't know that any of them have ever been approved by a wind farm. They may not have. The one that I read from a town up near St. Lawrence was pretty beneficial to the homeowner. I mean, it basically said you get 100% of what you need and so forth and so on. I don't think that's out of line. I just think that it might be tough for Black Oak to do that. I will say, however, that I've talked to people who are investors in the wind farm about the idea of the possibility of helping people to move. And they've talked about getting together with other investors and see if they could find some group of people among other investors that would actually pool the money together to buy properties that people that needed to move, and then resell these properties at some point in the future so that they could actually facilitate people being able to move and go somewhere else if they needed to.
Because being stuck somewhere and where it's unhealthy and you can't afford to leave is a pretty bad situation.
It's bad, especially if you have kids or older folks in your family that you can see every day that it's a problem and you don't know what to do about it.
But if a pig farm moves in next door, you don't have to do the same
Right.
thing to them?
Would I help neighbors to buy out from a pig farm?
Near a pig farm.
If I was the pig farm? Is that what you're saying? Oh, near a pig farm. Gotcha.
If a pig farm
Right.
moved in,
Right.
would you do the same thing for those neighbors?
Well, let me say that I had a friend who lives on not Boston, what's the road? Enfield Center Road. I think he lives on Enfield Center Road. That had a pig farm in his backyard. This was 3-4 years ago. Somebody started raising pigs.
Yeah,
Just
right.
going up the hill up there.
Yeah,
He actually couldn't live there at that point. The smell was too bad. He had some health issues. He said, I can't live there. I don't know what to do. He was down talking to my son. He's a good friend of my son. We offered him a piece of property at our place because I have some extra land. If he wanted to come and build there, I said, fine, you can come build your house here. if you
so
want to."
he found a solution. He found a solution.
I think the pig farm moved. Am I right about that?
No.
They're still there?
Right,
Maybe,
yes.
yeah, I think he was gonna go talk to them and see if he could get some kind of a,
Is not the pig farm still there?
They're moving, I think.
not the one on the south side, but the one on the north side of
Oh, you're
of
talking-
Enfield Center
Van
Road.
Noble Farms.
The Noble, yeah, yeah.
Oh, well, that's a new pig farm.
Yeah.
Not the one on the south side, no.
Oh.
No, they're still there, I know. And there's one on
Right.
this road here too. Although he doesn't have very many pigs, he only has like 6 pigs. But
Depends on what
depends on whether
your
there's little pigs. yes.
level is.
I know.
And
Oh,
then Marjorie Olds over in Mecklenburg needs help because Bergen's is driving her out.
yeah.
Not with a pig farm, but manure.
And these are issues that towns, Trumansburg, Ulysses had to deal with this, with the pig farm. lots of towns have to deal with these issues.
When you buy
Well-
property, you have to sign off that you are actually moving to an ag district, and you are aware of
Yes.
that there are noise
Yes.
and smells and
Yes.
stuff associated with that.
However, if a town were to make an ordinance against pig farms over a certain size, they could do that. And towns have done that too.
Yeah.
So,
Enfield?
Could-
No, not Enfield. Other towns have done that though, yeah.
Well,
Newfield
certainly,
just put in a
certainly
ruling
other towns
against the
have.
transfer facility.
And, you know, a motocross moves in next door.
Right?
Somebody who has a fascination with lights moves in next door.
Well, there was a
there
motocross
is-
down here at the corner of Van Dorn, and those guys were all day, all night, all, whatever. The guy that lived across the street finally sold his house and moved because he just couldn't deal with it anymore.
But, I mean, there is a long history here in this town of no land use restrictions.
Right.
And interestingly enough, the two land use restrictions that this town has put in, first of all, the wind law, was a big first for Enfield.
Right.
And there are regulations on the use of land in regarding windmills. And it was a pretty extensive law.
Right.
Now, you can argue it, but it
Well, we're
was a
working
big
on solar,
first.
so-
It was a big first for Enfield. And then they did go ahead and put in an anti-fracking law in the town of Enfield. There were a lot of people injured in the passing of that law.
Right.
20% of the, about 20% of the land in the town of Enfield was under lease. And
but they
not,
weren't,
that
yeah.
wasn't 20% of the residents.
Right.
That's 20% of the land. But there was a significant percentage of people who lost because that
Right.
law was passed. And-
However, when I talked to our lawyer about these kind of issues, he said, yeah, those kind of things happen, and there are ways that it just has to happen. But when it comes to health and safety issues, and there is an active, significant health issue that's happening to somebody in the town, that's different than a financial issue. And that, the seeker laws,
Certainly,
the seeker
certainly.
laws say that very clearly. If it's a financial issue, you can't really have any say in it. If it's a health and safety issue, you do have a say in it. And I think that applies to the town too, in terms of the laws we want to make. If it's a health and safety issue for the people in town, just like the junk car law is a health and safety issue, those are issues that are kind of a given. We have to do that at some point. Just like a noise law would be, if we had to, and there was noise that was damaging people, I would say probably within 20, 30 years, we will have a noise law too, because
Well, that might be.
that may happen.
But
it's
it's not in the
it's a
future.
different kind of issue if it's a health
Yes.
and safety issue.
yes, I will certainly agree with that. But there have been people in town that have lost.
Definitely, yes, yeah.
And some of them, although there was no outrage publicly, there's an
There
underground.
was a little bit of public outrage. Yeah.
Well,
Not much.
certainly in the driveway, there's been outrage in my presence,
Right, yeah,
in the driveway.
yeah.
I think a lot of the key concerns that people have been talking to us about, a lot of the Blackout residents, it is health and safety
Well-
related. Ultimately, that's when we talk about the issues, people are ultimately really concerned about the health and safety.
And certainly, there most likely are going to be some percentage or percent of people that are going to feel health issues, just like there are about being neighbors with agriculture farms.
So those are the people that I'm concerned about.
So we've But you do want to keep safety in there as an issue, not just health. You're gonna have to sell me hard on safety.
I think safety is a factor of it. I know Michael did the report on ice throw, and certainly if a 20-pound chunk of ice hit you at 100 miles an hour, you'd have some safety issues. The likelihood of that happening is 1 in 3 million or 30 million, or it's very, 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 very small.
You have a much higher chance of having a serious injury when you get into your automobile in the morning.
Yeah. So,
The likelihood, well, I mean, we'll have it in the final report, but the likelihood that there will be a blade fragment, more likely an ice throw, is more likely. The chances of someone being in the wrong place at the wrong time, so far, I don't think there's been any incidences of people getting hit or killed by, throwing ice or blade, although blades have hit homes. So there have been incidents of that happening, and ice hitting homes as well. So I think safety does play a factor in this.
I would like to make one small distinction, and I think it's important, and I don't know if I'll be able to get it across. I know one of the conversations that we had, though, I think at the last meeting, was about that if we're going to make any decisions based on health issues, that it needs to be only based on peer-reviewed scientific studies of real health issues that people have. And I understand conceptually why we would do that. I think in real terms, however, it's much less likely that there are going to be peer-reviewed scientific studies at this point of health issues that people have from living in a wind farm area, because it's very selective in terms of what your sensitivity is to these things that might happen. I'm really more concerned, rather than an ice throw hitting someone, I'm actually more concerned with a mom who's sitting at her kitchen sink doing some dishes, who can see a wind generator in the far off distance or not so far off distance, and has 3 kids playing outside in the yard, and is sitting there thinking, I wonder if those things are getting icy. I wonder if there's any, because that's actually real. The way that you feel sitting at your kitchen sink, worrying about your kids, is real. It's not a 1 in 3 million or 30 million chance of a piece of ice hitting your kids. It's actually concerned about your kids. And do I have to make sure they play on the other side of the house, or maybe I should just call them in because there's ice on the turbines right now and I just don't know what to do. These are real things. There is no scientific peer-reviewed study of that mom and the anxiety that she feels about the kids being out in the yard right then. There are probably very few scientific peer-reviewed studies, especially since there's nobody that's going to pay for them, of somebody who's lying in bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and there's a whoosh, whoosh, whoosh outside, and they're saying to themselves, I have to live with this for the rest of my life. How am I ever going to get any sleep? What am I going to do? I got to get up for work in the morning. How am I going to ever get any sleep? That's real. There's no studies about that, but it's real for that guy that's lying there in bed, has got to get up in the morning and can't go to sleep. Those are things that I'm concerned about. And I don't know any way to prove that to anybody. And if Black Oak, in a corporate fashion, can't look at that because there's no studies, I understand. I understand that that's something that they can't consider because it's not part of how corporations look at things. I do think, though, that as a town board, we need to look at those things and not say, are there studies about it, but to say to ourselves, is it real? Is this really something that's going to happen with the people living there? And if it is real, how can we mitigate this circumstance? What can we do about it to help the situation? To make
That
it
was
better?
going to be my next question.
Exactly. So maybe it's just to say, if you really have to move, we'll make it so you can move and you won't lose your shirt by doing it. Maybe that's one answer. I've been through, I had that thought months ago when I first started thinking about this. We did all these committee meetings and said, gee, There must be some other answer, there must be some way we can compromise. And I look at the setbacks as they are, and I look at the situations, and I look at what's there. There's really no place for them to go. When you talk about noise issues from a turbine, there are people that stand under a turbine and can't hardly hear anything at all, and they walk out 1,500 feet and they say, wow, it's really loud out here at 1,500 feet where I couldn't hear anything underneath it. Well, sometimes that's the way the sound works, depending on what's going on with the turbine. I don't think we really have a solution. I think we either say this can't happen, or we have to find some way to mitigate what's going to happen to the people that are going to be close by. I don't think there's any way that we can move turbines around, do a little chess piece thing. I don't think we can do it at this point. There just isn't enough room up there to do that.
No, I agree.
These people have spent a lot of time and a lot of money trying to figure that out, and they've done due diligence and trying to say, okay, is there a better way we can do this? I don't think there's a better way they can do it anymore. I think we either have to say, we're not going to do this, we're not going to let it happen, or let's figure out some way we can protect the town residents, because to me, that's my job. My job is to say, okay, how do I protect the town residents? Because that's what I'm here for. So the only way I know of, I can't put a dome around their houses. I can't stop the noise. With flicker, yeah, you can put up shades on your window. It's still, you walk outside, it's still there. You can't stop it happening. These things are 500 feet tall, 487 feet tall, and they're right there, and they're going to be there for 25 years. And they're moving. Anytime the wind is moving, they're moving. It's there. There's nothing you can do. The only thing that you can do to help yourself is to not be there yourself. So if we can find some way to make it so that if they have to leave, they can leave without really losing significant in their lives, that's at least something we can do to help them out.
Is there some mechanism that independent arbitration could happen, that like a binding arbitration? Like if there's a dispute saying, well, this is happening, and another side saying, well, that's not really happening, we don't believe it's because of this, that there's some kind of binding arbitration, third-party binding arbitration that can be implemented as part of the solution.
There has to be some way to identify the people that are damaged and how to help them. It's not simple. There hasn't been one part of this whole thing that's been simple, and it's not going to get any simpler. But I think we can do it. I think we can find a way, and I think we can find a way that'll seem fair to everybody.
I just don't see in the current information that we have, that there isn't such a mechanism for something like that, for any kind of recourse.
They're really,
If people really think that there's an issue, and perhaps, there's a fund that gets created that, here's like a mitigation or an arbitration fund that these things can be solved with.
As far as I understand it, this would have to be an issue that would be dealt with by all the parties concerned to find a way to proceed forward.
Right.
I don't know any other way we could do that, and everybody feel comfortable with the process.
You probably don't want to go through a binding arbitration at first, but that could be a last resort, saying, well, if you go through these steps and there's still no resolution, then it goes through a binding arbitration where a third party decides, saying, okay, that's my decision, and that's it.
I think it's definitely a possibility that would be one way we could do it. The thing is, when you start thinking about things and you get a bunch of people in the room together, you actually sometimes find answers and ways to do things that you hadn't thought of before. So, we're starting with some ideas right here, and we have some very traditional, typical ways of doing things. There may be some ways that maybe somebody else has already invented this process somewhere else in some other country, and it's just, wow, that sounds really good. That's a good way to do it. And everybody said, yeah, that's a good way to do it. Here it is. Maybe not. But I think if we put us all together and put our heads to it, I think we can find a way. I think it's possible.
I think that's probably more financially tenable than losing, several $1 million by it not happening.
Yeah, and I don't know. To be honest, I don't know what kind of flexibility to negotiate Black Oak Wind Farm has. And I don't know that even Marguerite knows the answer to that for sure by herself. I mean, you can say if you do or not, but it doesn't seem like an answer that you can just give right off the top of your head and say
Yeah,
that
that's
it's there.
fair.
Yeah, so.
Can I ask an unrelated question? Are you going to address the decommissioning bond question that we had discussed earlier?
bring that file, I think. Okay, well. Guess the answer's no.
Well, I don't need to extend this conversation anymore. I said what I had to say. I don't know.
I would like to summarize. So the committee is getting the written report
Yes.
together to get disseminated to the board by Monday-ish.
Well,
No.
end of day Monday-ish, so.
Oh, end of day
End of
Monday-ish.
Monday-ish,
For discussion on Wednesday.
yes.
Meanwhile, Mike would like the board to also, I mean, I will check, but I do not think it's the purview of the board to comment during the public comment.
I think part of what you were getting at, if I could summarize it a little bit, is rather than wait, further down the process to, proving the final, draft, the final supplemental EIS and then the finding statement, is being able to present those issues before that point so they can be addressed sooner. Is
That's,
that-
you got it, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, who's
I
gonna
think
start
that's the
writing?
intent.
Well, I think I know Michael and I will both be writing our stuff.
Okay.
And if the board next week decides that that's appropriate for someone to write, then I think that we'll find somebody that will write it comfortably. I'm not worried about that part of it. If nobody else, I will do it. I just don't want to take it on. If it seems like anybody might feel that I would write a prejudice summary, I don't want to write a prejudice summary that doesn't represent everybody's views. So,
I think we all have concerns that probably could be said and could be addressed beforehand.
Yeah.
Michael wants to say something.
I'm sorry.
Just wondered if I might address the board for a second on the decommissioning bond question.
Yeah, I totally
understand
lost
you didn't bring
it.
the materials, so I'm not gonna refer to materials that the rest of you haven't seen. But just as preface to that, one of the stipulations of the town law and of the secret process is that we would provide a decommissioning bond to the town to cover the cost of taking down the turbines in the end game. And I wasn't here last night, but I understood that that was also an item of discussion last night. One of the forms that we can provide that is called a surety bond, and we have provided Guy Crow with a copy of the surety bond that we would propose to buy to provide to the town to cover for that. And Guy has reviewed it, and I will allow him to share around his thoughts on it. But what I would love the board to be able to address maybe at the next meeting would be your thoughts on that form of bond, and allow us to move forward in procuring it, because we would like to, one of the things I'm trying to demonstrate is goodwill on my side for the things that I can do, and the decommissioning bond is something I can do. And so, if you guys can look at that when Ann gets a chance to send it around, look at Guy's comments, that gives you a chance to get back to Guy, talk to him about it, then eventually at some point the town board, hopefully sooner rather than later, you guys can approve that as an acceptable instrument so that we can go ahead and procure it.
and there were 3 different methods of that bond presentation that you had in your paperwork, right? 3 different possible ways of bonding. So,
Yeah.
and the surety bond is what you would like us to look at.
Mhm.
And I wonder if as a board, we want to look at the other methods too, just to know what we're.
Well, I think a guy commented on all of them, didn't he?
Did he?
Well, the options are cash collateralized, letter of credit, basically, money in escrow or a bond.
Right.
And we have no ability at this point to provide the first two. A bond is the thing we can do.
Right.
Yeah.
And we would likely replace it in a future year basically the way that project finance works, we don't get much money at this stage. We have to
Right.
have our permits, and in order to have our permits, we need to have the bond in place, after which we can get our financing.
Right.
And so in a future year, we would likely turn it into a much more liquid asset. It would be cash collateralized letter of credit or be cash in escrow, because those things are cheaper for us to provide you as well.
Exactly.
Buying a security bond year after year is a waste of money. But as an upfront move, it is by far the easiest thing to do to get the process started.
Right. So that information is what Ann has.
That's what Ann has.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
And
I put it in the April folder and I shouldn't have.
And you need a decision on that?
In the next 2 weeks would be great.
Okay.
And if I recall correctly last night, that was a comment from one of the members of the public.
It's in the
About that.
wind law, there has to be
Yeah.
an arrangement for decommissioning.
I don't think we addressed it when the comment was made last night, but yeah, it is in the.
I was in the audience,
Yeah,
keeping my lips buttoned.
yeah. Yes, but yeah, it is. It is
It's in the wind
it
law,
is in the wind law, yeah.
and
I think I heard a little comment.
you were
Thank you.
privy, you were privy. You were the captive audience. And it's clearly spelled out in the wind law, the possibilities. But on that same subject, the road use agreement is also one of the details that is left till the last of the seeker process, if you will, prior or just before permitting. And we have that's what was also in the April folder that I didn't bring. The draft that Guy has cooked up.
There
It's
are.
a poor use.
Right.
But Dan, what class of roads are we?
What do you mean, what?
Well, there's all these descriptions, class 1 road, class 2 roads, class 3 roads. Buddy won't answer my telephone call.
Okay.
Guy isn't,
The class
hasn't
of road
ridden the
defined-
roads.
Class of road has been defined in different towns by
Different people.
by their road use policies.
Yeah,
Like typically, the highest class road would be a fully paved road.
right. I think
Um,
that's the 6 or 7 road. I think the class 1 is the
Class one
pothole
is-
rut.
Class 1 is a dirt track, basically.
Yeah, right.
that's-
It's the cow path,
It's
I believe.
usually class 1 is the basic road. Class
If I
2 would
send
be
you these
gravel.
descriptions, can you give me a good guess of which class road we are?
Yeah, I think I've already done some of that, but I just don't have it written top.
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
your gravel roads are your lowest grade
Yeah.
roads. Your surface treated roads are the next grade road, and then a fully paved road would be the highest grade that would be
Right.
in the town.
Okay.
Right now, Black Oak Road used to be a highly paved road. It's basically almost a gravel road now.
Yeah, Black Oak, yeah.
Yeah.
But that, we
The
don't
county-
care, that's
the-
county.
The Black Oak part of it, but the town part of it is probably a class 2. It's in fairly good condition.
Yeah, all right. Well,
So
I'll email you the definitions. I meant to today and didn't get it out.
Yeah, I'll have that information for you next week if you want me to talk
Okay.
about that.
All right. So I will get you the draft road use agreement
Right.
and we'll get we don't need to look at all the classifications.
No, you don't have all the classifications.
No, we don't have all the classifications.
You've
No.
got.
1 mile of road, I don't think we have all the
Yeah,
classifications.
basically all the roads in the town are considered rural roads with low levels of traffic.
But we don't have a class 1 probably.
Oh, someplace you do.
Oh,
There's some dirt
someplace we
roads
do.
someplace.
Oh, okay. Oh.
I think there's a couple of seasonal roads. I would call Van Dorn's Road
Oh,
a
see.
class -5.
Now watch it.
The south Van Dorn's Road. Where do you live?
Enfield Center going right up the hill there.
Yeah.
That's seasonal, right?
Buttersmith and Fish Road, parts of Fish Road.
Fish Road is, I mean, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
and
okay.
They're
The seasonal roads,
seasonal
yes.
roads.
Okay, all right. Is anybody interested in going to Marsh Hill Wind Farm with me? I'm gonna call the supervisor and work up a visit.
I think we have some other visits already scheduled for other places and times.
Okay. Well, if anybody wants to go with me, email me so that I can,
You don't have a time yet. That,
No, I didn't start the process because first somebody was on vacation and then, but now that's over and so I haven't started planning. But if anybody thinks they want to go, I'll include them in the plans time-wise.
Those are definitely the most similar turbines anywhere in.
Marsh Hill,
Marsh Hill are.
that's my understanding. They're the most similar to what this proposed is.
That's not what makes the noise. The length of the blade is what makes the sound, and the manufacturer and the shape of the blade that they make. Looking at a Mesa turbine that's
Well, since we
7
can't
years
get the
old.
noise text specs from GE, we would have a hard time doing anything but taking your word for that.
I think it was dependent on the time that, the visit would be.
I think I can offer you different information.
Well, I just want the specs.
Well, we probably don't want to get
It's,
into a discussion.
the board is doing business. You can argue afterwards. And I think the last thing, so have we kind of summarized?
have two more things.
You have two more. Okay, is it about the wind farm?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I'll do this different topic.
Okay. Just in relation to the road use agreement, there are, in my mind, at least 3 or 4 other paperwork type submittals that have to come from Black Oak as well before the
Oh,
permit
yes.
is issued.
At least.
In terms of other areas, so,
Well, they have to have the haul routes.
the which?
Haul
Right,
routes.
right.
No, we've got them already. They were in the.
They're not in the draft, but they're someplace else.
There,
They're in the
there's
county.
a discussion in the draft of the haul routes that they're using.
Oh, I don't have Appendix A. That could be a reason.
There was just, it's basically state roads.
The haul routes are already listed.
There was a listing of whether they, depending on which direction they're coming from the north, south, and pretty much everything was coming from the north and the east, I believe. And they'd be on state roads until they got to Black Oak Road, which is a county road. And then they'd have to travel part way on town roads. And that's a little different now because there's different town roads that they'll
Right.
be on.
Right. Okay, I'll find the haul routes.
So it seems like
And yes,
at
there
some
is-
point, we might want to have a list of all the things that are going to be necessary
Yeah,
to have.
You have a pretty good list in the finding statement from the original
yeah,
environmental impact statement.
right.
Of all the different.
All the different things that needed to be met, including the road use agreement, the
Decommissioning.
stormwater pollution prevention plan.
Decommissioning
Bunch
bond.
of mitigation issues, they're all in the findings.
Yeah, I think these were actually beyond, they were smaller and less formal, but they were things that Black Oak promised that they would get done before starting the process.
When did they do this?
In the papers that they gave us, the finding statement, the final environmental impact statement. If you want, I'll make you a list for the next meeting.
Yeah, that'd be
That
good.
would be fine to do.
I'm pretty sure they were covered in the finding, the things that were brought up in the original environmental impact statement, they were included in the finding statement as elements that had to be completed before they could get a construction permit.
Right. I think there's more than what are in the finding statement, though.
Oh,
So,
okay, I could talk to you
yeah.
about that, but I
Yeah.
think it was pretty complete.
Yeah.
And the original one.
Yeah.
And,
Lit, that was done last year. That was
yeah,
finalized
I mean, the finding
last year.
statement's 50 pages, I think.
Right, no, I think it's 82.
82, okay. I measure by.
Some things I remember.
Yeah.
Well, let me
Okay.
make a list, and then we
Yeah,
can.
that's
come
fine,
forward.
I'll be glad to talk
Okay.
about that, because I was involved with helping
Yeah, good.
draft that. so.
Good, that sounds great. Then the other issue is a little more tricky, maybe. And it was a little bit confusing to me when I read it and thought about it. Last week, we got our town law manuals from Alice. happily. And sorry, I lost track of my wind law here.
No, I did win that.
Let's see where I put it. Ah, here we are. So I'm going to be a little bit obtuse until I get to the point, and then we won't maybe be quite so obtuse. This is section 3 of the Wind Energy Facilities Local Law from 2009. It's page 17. Administrative appeals. Any person or persons aggrieved by the failure to issue or renew any variance, waiver, or permit by any determination, interpretation, or decision of the town board, the planning board, or the enforcement officer, including by any conditions attached to any permit, variance, or waiver, or the revocation or suspension of any permit, variance, or waiver, shall have a right to appeal such matter to the town supervisor. And this process shall be referred to as an administrative appeal under this local law. Such appeal must be filed within 10 days of the date the enforcement officer files and provides notice of any decision, or within 10 days of any other action or determination appealed from. The following procedures apply to all administrative appeals under this local law. Any person seeking to appeal must file a petition for appeal, the form of which shall be supplied by the enforcement officer. Such petition must concisely state the basis of the appeal and describe the underlying denial, revocation, condition, or other matter appealed from. Such petition shall be verified and shall state the ground or grounds upon which the applicant claims that the determination of was erroneous, arbitrary, or capricious. Such petition shall be filed with the town clerk within 10 days after the receipt of notice of the adverse determination or other matter providing grounds for an appeal. C, within 20 days of the filing of such appeal with the town clerk, the town supervisor shall investigate the matter and may hold one or more hearings on the matter. The person who filed the appeal is entitled to, number 1, at least 10 days' notice of any hearing, and number 2, to be present at all such hearings and meetings. Such notice shall state the name and address of the appellant, the subject matter of the hearing, and the date, place, and hour designated for such hearing. A copy of such notice shall be mailed to the appellant at least 10 days before such hearing. Upon any hearing, the applicant involved shall be entitled to be represented by legal counsel and to present whatever competent and material testimony or other evidence as may be relevant to the subject matter of the hearing. Whenever such hearing is required to be a public hearing, the town supervisor shall comply with all other notice procedures required by this local law and by the town law of the state of New York. Similarly, the requirements of the open meeting laws shall apply. D, at the hearing, the town supervisor shall consider or reconsider the appellant's petition and in his discretion may receive new or additional evidence in support of and in opposition thereto. The town supervisor, after such hearing, may affirm the action or determination made, may require the granting or reinstatement of any variance, waiver, or permit, or may take such other action as he deems necessary or desirable relative to such appeal. E, the town supervisor shall have appellate jurisdiction over the decisions and determinations of the town board as chief executive officer for the town, and not as a legislator thereof, such that no claim that an administrative appeal of a town board action or determination is futile or unnecessary shall permit the appellant to avoid the administrative appeals process set forth in this local law. F, a determination upon the appeal shall be made by the town supervisor within 30 days at the close of the hearing, and written notice of the determination must be mailed to the appellant and filed in the office of the town clerk. And G, no judicial review may be had or filed until the administrative appeal process outlined in this local law has been completed and a determination is either 1, issued pursuant to subparagraph D of this section, or 2, the town supervisor fails to issue a determination upon the appeal within the time required by subparagraph F of this section. If the town supervisor issues a decision and the appellant remains aggrieved, a judicial review may be had pursuant to Article 78 of New York Civil Practice Law and Rules, and the determination of the town supervisor shall be a final action or determination for the purposes of said Article 78. So that's how our law reads in Section 3 of Article 5, I believe it is. So I was just sitting and reading my town law manual the other day and trying to learn more about how things work. And under the part that had to do with officers of the town and what you're supposed to do and what you're not supposed to do and all that kind of things, I came to the town board, and it has this is section 2-16 on page 19. Has the composition of the town board, it has the responsibilities of the town board, and then under responsibilities, it has number 1, majority of board acts as body. The town board as a group is the executive head of the town and must function as a body. There is no true executive in town government like the mayor of a city or village. Thus, an individual board member or town supervisor may not unilaterally act on behalf of the town board, and each town board member has the same authority as any other town board member. In most instances, a simple majority of the town board is necessary for the board to take action. Additionally, the town board may delegate certain responsibilities to the town supervisor, and it says C 2.7. Then when we go to 2-17, we have supervisor, responsibility of the supervisor. As a member of the town board, the supervisor has no more authority than any other individual town board member. This means that the supervisor's vote has no more weight than any other town board member, nor does the supervisor's vote count as a tiebreaker. Although supervisors do not necessarily have more authority in most instances, they do have more responsibilities. The supervisor presides over town board meetings, see Town Law 63, and has a number of responsibilities regarding financial matters. For the description of the supervisor's financial responsibilities, please refer to Town Law 29 and 125. And then B, under the section of supervisor, it says delegated authority. In order to keep the town functioning in between town board meetings and address day-to-day issues, the town board may delegate the power and duties of administration and supervision of the town or special improvement districts to the supervisor. However, a town board may not abdicate or surrender its basic statutory responsibilities to the supervisor. And when I read this, I thought, gee, that section of the Wind Law is not legal. That's my understanding, and of course I'm not a lawyer.
No, that's the way you see it.
It's exactly the way I see it, yes. And I'm wondering, I know that Guy Crow had some oversight of this law, although when I talked to him about it, he wasn't really familiar with it. And assumably when he had the oversight, he was familiar with it. But I was feeling like maybe it would be best for us as a town board at this point or soon, before it might possibly come to that point, for us to understand if this section 3 in the town wind law is actually legal or if it's not legal, and we should either keep it or strike it, as the case may be.
I'd be glad to research that.
Thank you. I
That's
appreciate
quite one of the simplest jobs I've been given this one.
It sounds like we can't abdicate in this.
Well,
in this.
An administrative appeal is, anyway,
well, it's what they call administrative appeal in the law.
isn't that what it's called? Yes.
That's what we call it in the law. Whether in fact it is an administrative appeal would be the question. And whether in fact an administrative appeal would allow something that is actually town board business to be delegated to the supervisor when it's not just day-to-day functioning of the town. It's not just a fiscal issue. It actually is something much more significant in terms of what the town board's responsibilities are. So to me, this may be somebody having read the town manual and say, oh, let's just call it administrative appeal and say the administrator can, or the supervisor can do that. But I'm wondering if it was actually legal for them to do that.
Other municipalities actually have a board of appeals.
And of course, it could have significant issues at some point, not that it will, but if for some reason you had to use that administrative appeal at some point, and
The appellant has the ability to do it in Article 78.
Say it again.
The appellant, if they don't like the outcome of the administrative appeal, has the right to do it Article 78.
Which is illegal,
Yeah,
of course.
a
But-
real judge.
But they can come to you first, if they want.
It's the lowest level of settling,
Right. My concern is this: if by some chance the town board turned down the wind farm because they wanted something different, let's say in the FEIS, and it didn't have it on there, at some point it would be possible for the wind farm to come to you and say, we would like to file administrative appeal. If by chance you voted favorably on that appeal and you said to them, well, I think you should go ahead and do it, and a permit were issued, and they went ahead and started to build the wind farm, and then the town was sued by residents saying this was not legal for the town to do that, for them to file this appeal. At that point, the wind farm could have spent a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time, and the possibility would be that would be thrown out, that your approval of their permit was not legal, and that way they're back in limbo again. I'd like to just think about that ahead of time before we might possibly get to that
Sure.
situation.
Easy thing to check.
Good. And that's all I had to say tonight.
Good research, Mike.
It was brought to my attention that the town does not have a flag policy. So I researched this a little bit, and it's my administrative determination that before instituting a flag policy, one should have personnel to carry out the flag policy that is published or passed. So in the latest, I did bring that, newsletter, in my section, I asked if there was anybody interested in volunteering to carry out a flag policy. And lo and behold, I got a volunteer. So I was wondering, does the board want to go ahead and make a flag policy?
If
And I'll tell you
People want
exactly what I'll put forward. It's the federal flag policy.
I wouldn't have a clue what a flag policy looked like, so.
Under certain conditions, the flag would be raised or lowered. We just don't have
That-
such.
That's what a
Read the
flag
pink
policy-
sheet.
yeah.
That's the short version. There is a longer version.
I did read that, yeah.
It was okay
Any
with me.
interest?
Who would do the raising and lowering,
Oh, the name of the volunteer?
or the, right, yeah, who would,
Her name is Anna Long.
oh, we actually have someone in mind.
What did I just say?
I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was filing stuff.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Because of this article, I did get a response.
Okay, good.
I did get a
Okay,
response.
good.
And I did meet with her today, and she seems physically capable, and so if there's interest in this,
For my part, I'm happy to have you develop a flag policy if you are willing to, and hire or.
no,
get Anna
I
Long
don't
to
think
do
we
it.
can afford to
Or
hire.
Anna
but-
Long to do that.
she's a volunteer, right?
She's a volunteer because I didn't have any staff that I felt would, we could put this under even other related duties.
It's fine with me.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Okay, that's, let's see, we've got the road use decommissioning, okay. Okay, any other business? I'll move for adjournment till next Wednesday, April 13th. And he seconds, okay. We're adjourned.